this is sometimes just a matter of gravity to getting it lined up. Now, when you have it lined up right, you'll notice there's a hole here where the mainspring pin goes in, right here. And if you can see light through it completely, you know you have the mainspring in completely, or you have it set properly. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a large punch, and we're temporarily going to put it in here to make sure that the hammer cocks, because sometimes in doing this process the leaf spring gets misaligned. So we're going to try to cock the hammer. That's one click. That's two clicks. Now we're going to hold on to the hammer and pull the trigger, okay, to avoid letting the hammer fall by itself. And it did. And also notice that by doing that, okay, this will be laying down. When I pull the trigger, I did have my hand on it, but it's got a light trigger on it. When I did pull the trigger, this did raise up. So at this point, everything is functioning properly. Okay, so now the next step in order to reassemble this is to put the grip safety back in. Now, in order to put the grip safety back in, you're going to have to pull you're going to have to move the mainspring down a little bit. So we're going to line this up, and we're going to pull the mainspring down just a little bit, holding the gun kind of upside down a little until it snaps in, and push the mainspring back in. Okay, and again we're going to use this punch and make sure that everything is still functioning properly, because again sometimes the hammer strut might not fall into the mainspring properly, and sometimes the leaf spring may get out of alignment. So we're going to do this again and make sure we can cock the hammer. There's one click, there's two clicks. Okay, we pull the trigger, and again this should pop up, and then we release the hammer. Okay, so we have the hammer, we release the hammer now. We're going to pull this punch out, and we're going to put the pin back in that belongs here. Now again, if you remember, there's a side with a divot on it, and then there's a side with that's rounded. We want to put the rounded end in first. So we're going to take this, and we can actually put this on the table, because this does not have to go through. We're going to put the pin in there, take our hammer, tap it down, and to avoid damaging the gun any, we're going to take a punch, put it in the divot, and seat the pin the rest of the way, and you'll feel it snap into the hole. You'll feel it snap in there. And again, we're going to make sure that the hammer is still functioning properly. There's two clicks, pull the trigger, hammer comes up. Okay, the next step is we have to put the safety back on. Now before we do that, I keep getting interrupted here. The next step is we're going to put the safety back on, and as I said before, we're going to put this back together in reverse order. So we're going to put the safety on this side first, this side of the gun first, the thumb safety. So the first thing we want to do is we want to cock the hammer back, and we're going to pick up the safety, and again there's a flange on this pin that sticks out, and it goes into this channel. So we're going to push the safety in, the grip safety in, line this up, and push it in all the way, and it just turns around and slides right on there and doesn't come out. Next thing to do is we put the plunger spring back in. Okay, this again is a thing that looks like the spring is broken, but it isn't really. And we're going to slide that in, narrow part going in first, and it will slide all the way in. Okay, depress the grip safety and take the thumb safety, line it up in the hole, and then we have to take and wiggle it up and down to get it back in here. But this plunger spring is somewhat in the way, so we're going to take a pin or a punch and we're going to push it in a little bit, push in the plunger spring, and we're going to wiggle the safety back and forth until it goes all the way in, and it snaps in, it locks in with the other thumb safety. And let the hammer fall. And that is, at this point, the complete reassembly of the frame. Okay, I'm going to put the frame aside, and we're going to now talk about the slide. Okay, there's one of the differences with this slide is removing the extractor, because the extractor is actually pinned in here. And I'm also going to show you how to take the firing pin out. So we're going to start with the firing pin. You're going to need 2 punches. Okay, we're going to take 1 punch and push down this plunger spring pin, or this plunger, and then we're going to take another punch, and we're going to push this in, which is the firing pin, which is going to really let us take this piece out. Okay, so I'm going to put this down, push the plunger spring down, push this in, and lift a little bit. Release the plunger spring. Now, at this point, this piece here should come out very easily. It falls right out. Okay, now to get the firing pin out, we're going to push the plunger spring down. But remember, the firing pin has there's a spring in here, and it's going to come flying out. So what you want to do is use a finger or a thumb or something like that to cover the hole, and push down the plunger push down this plunger, and out comes the firing pin. Okay, and we want to continue to hold that down, and out comes the firing pin. And you can take this spring off. Kind of want to unscrew it. It does come out, and clean off the firing pin. Put a little oil in there, put it back together, turn it and twist it. Now, before we put the firing pin back in, I'm going to show you about this plunger. This plunger will come out. You just need a pair of tweezers or a pair of pliers, and you just pull it straight up. And additionally, in here there's a spring, which of course makes the plunger go up and down. Okay, so let's put all this back together, and at this point now you can also pull out another piece which actually holds the plunger spring together, or it holds the plunger spring in the gun, this piece here. Now, normally on a Colt you would remove the plunger and this little spring, and this would be connected to the extractor, and you would pull the extractor out. But it's not like that on a Sig. The extractor is pinned in here. So I'm going to put this back together. I'm going to slide this back in, and it's got to line up properly. Put the spring in. And then put the plunger in. And you hold the plunger down and push this piece in, and that'll lock the plunger back in. And you push this piece back in, that locks the plunger back in. Now we're going to put the firing pin back in. Okay, and then we just take and slide the whole firing pin in the hole, but again we have to hold this plunger down. And it popped out. Take a punch, and we'll push the firing pin in all the way, and then release the plunger spring. Release this plunger. That'll stop the firing pin from coming back. And if you notice here, the firing pin is sticking out. Okay, but that'll get fixed in a minute. We're going to put this piece back in the gun, and that just slides right here in the slot. Easier said than done sometimes. There we go. I had to push this in just a little bit. It wasn't aligned right. Okay, now again the firing pin is still sticking out. In order to release that, we push the plunger down, and the firing pin comes back out. And this is all part of the Series 80's firing pin safety. Again, if when you pull the trigger, this little arm comes up, hits that plunger. I don't know if you're going to be able to see this or not. Hits the plunger and then pushes the plunger in, which allows the hammer to push the firing pin forward. It's just not going to cooperate with me. And there's the firing pin. The next part is the extractor, taking the extractor out. Now, to take the extractor out, you need a very